Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to talk about how Treyarch failed and what Infinity Ward could learn from Black Ops 4 to make Modern Warfare that much better. Obviously at launch, Black Ops 4 was a huge success. The Black Ops Pass seemed like a great idea, and there's plenty of people that play Black Ops 4 daily and love the game with a passion. But I think in the future when people look back on Black Ops 4, it's going to be seen as a failure. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about over 20 different things where I think Black Ops 4 either did very well or they completely missed the mark. Go ahead and let me know down in the comment section below, are you a fan of Black Ops 4 and what are your most and least favorite parts of the game? If you enjoyed the video in some way, regardless if you agree or disagree, feel free to hit that like button. And if you're looking to find your way back for more Call of Duty content, make sure you do subscribe with notifications on. So the first thing I want to mention, start off on a positive note, is the camos. I think that the reactive camos are probably one of the best ideas that they've ever had in Call of Duty. And I think them bringing it to Black Ops 4 was a complete game changer on what is possible with camouflages. Especially early on in the game's life cycle, they made it worthwhile to do those camo challenges so you can get your gold, your diamond, and your dark matter, because they had that reactive capability. Obviously, as the game's life cycle went on, I did a complete video on it where it actually had all 29 reactive camos currently in the game, and you can see that they progressed and they improved over time. Obviously some are better than others, but overall I would say the vast majority of them are actually pretty nice weapon camos. And that kind of ties into where they missed the mark in that grind factor, because we had a grind factor for the weapons. Obviously you want to do the camo challenges so you could unlock those specific camos, but they never translated this to specialists. In Black Ops 3 they had hero gear, so if you completed specific challenges you would essentially get dark matter for your specialist, which is a huge missed opportunity for Black Ops 4 in my opinion. So one other significant change that Black Ops 4 did that it looks like Modern Warfare is going in the opposite direction, which in my opinion is actually a good thing, is the 5 versus 5 game modes. I think that was probably one of the worst things they could have ever done. It really slowed down the pace of the game in a game that was designed to be fast. Obviously in Modern Warfare we're going to have the 10v10 game modes, the 2v2, 6v6, and the larger game modes, the 20 versus 20, the 32 versus 32, and supposedly even a 50 versus 50. So for Modern Warfare they're pretty much going to have something for everyone. So let's go ahead and move on to skill gap, and that's one of the areas that I think Black Ops 4 completely missed the mark. And they made several design choices to actually cater towards the lowest skilled players to kind of even out the playing field, and this is actually bad for a couple different reasons. The main being that because more often than not it kind of has the opposite effect. And so you know exactly what I'm talking about. Let's go ahead and go through a few examples. The first being specialists. Initially we're thinking, you know what, we're gonna go ahead and put specialists in the game so people who are brand new to the game, they can actually feel a little bit strong, maybe a little bit overpowered for a quick second, and maybe get a kill here or there. And if they're able to get a kill, they're just gonna stay with the game longer, they're gonna play it a little bit more, and maybe they're gonna spend a little bit of money on microtransactions. And that'd be great if only new players were able to use specialists, but at the end of the day good players are going to get access to them too, and they are able to maximize and abuse these specialists to the fullest. A perfect example of this is the Reaper specialist. More often than not what I see is a new player use Reaper, they're using the radar shroud to kind of block up the map. When they actually get their specialist to get maybe 1 or 2 kills, then they get killed because they didn't know how to use it properly. Then you put it in a skilled player's hands and almost inevitably they're getting like 7, 8, 10 kills because they were given this freebie specialist they didn't really need to do anything to earn. So that's just a quick example of why specialists don't really help the player base, especially new players coming to the game. The next thing that lowers the skill gap is EKIAs, and they're implementing the game so if you get an assist, maybe you don't get kills on a regular basis, it's going to inflate your overall perceived kills to make you feel like a better player. And this doesn't really help new players because more often than not they get a ton of assists and they die often, and they're not really getting streaks, which is the result of actually getting these EKIAs. Whereas on the other hand, a good player tends to abuse this. And there's several forms of abuse when it comes to this. There's several times where maybe I've only had a bloodthirsty, which is 5 kills, and I already have a strike team. But I've seen other people where they actually have 0 kills, all EKIAs, and they can actually get a gunship. So that's one of the things that can really be abused if you know how to abuse the system, and that was designed to protect new players, make them feel better about their overall experience. But what ends up happening is if I'm calling it a strike team, sniper's nest, gunship, the new player doesn't really feel like they're getting a great experience. They're just getting stomped every single match. So there's just a couple big examples of why I think lowering the skill gap is not good for the overall health of the game. Obviously, the other main one is kind of related to my channel. Obviously, I do videos about helping players improve. And if the skill gap's a little bit lower, players are generally less motivated to actually improve, which is kind of sad, but that is what it is. So let's get to the big elephant in the room. I know that a lot of people probably want to talk about this particular area, and that is the DLC content. And there's different DLC content we could look at. We could look at the maps as far as the Black Ops Pass. We could look at how they introduced the weapons, the camos, and the black market as a whole. And this has to be one of the worst parts of the game, and it definitely went downhill very fast. Obviously, in the beginning, we had a 200 tier system, which was way too long, and it felt like it kind of just dragged on. It didn't really feel like a real event. But this is the first event that we had where it actually had content. You grinded through, you got some reactive camos, you got some specific mastercraft variants, so it actually felt like you were grinding with purpose. Even though it still had a ton of filler, it got a little bit better with the second event because there was a lot more content in it where it didn't feel like quite as much filler because there wasn't like 200 tiers. I think it was 100 tiers if I recall. And then we also had that Barbarians event middle way through where they gave us a Cap 45, we got a reactive camo for the Hades, and we got some other weapon variants along the way, along with a couple DLC weapons that were actually within the tiers. So they're very worth grinding for. And it was at that point in the game where about 90 to 95% of the content was actually grindable. They had a few things in the black market, they added reserves and stuff like that, and then it just completely went downhill. It ended up being where like 60-70% of the content you actually had to pay for, or just get lucky in reserves. And in my opinion, that business model does not work at all. Obviously, it worked with Fortnite because it's a free-to-play game, and it works with other free-to-play games where you're asked to buy $20 worth of content because the game's completely free. But in a game that costs $60 plus $50 for the Black Ops Pass, there's no way you should ever be asked to pay $30 for a weapon camo. That's just ridiculous. I know they put in reserves, kind of bundle it up, but that doesn't make it right. Obviously, if I don't want more reserves, I shouldn't have to pay for more reserves. I should just be able to buy the camo outright, whether it's $4, $6, $8, whatever it is. That would at least be more reasonable. But $30 for a hammer that you won't get access to any other way is just completely ridiculous. But like I was saying at the start of this, when they added the reserves, it was kind of an okay system. It was just mostly filler, not really anything you wanted in reserves because you were able to grind out the content you wanted through the contraband stream. So there was at least a fair business model. You do X, you get Y. But for whatever reason, they decided to go to the dark side, end up throwing those DLC weapons in the reserve supply pool. And there's over 2,000 items in the game, so it would take you an incredibly long time to actually grind out all these items. They started diluting all these different contraband streams, these mini events, taking out the actual content and making it a little bit more RNG by making a lot of the tiers actual reserves or weapon bribes. So they completely messed up, and obviously there's people out there that are going to say, well, Activision is kind of forcing them to do a certain thing, and although I agree with that to a certain extent, this is definitely Treyarch's doing. And the reason why I say that is because Black Ops 3 had a very similar business model. And then we got a slightly improved one with Infinite Warfare and Modern Warfare Remastered, and then we got an even better one with World War II, which was actually pretty fair. You got a ton of way to earn the drops, you got a ton of bribes, everything was grindable. For the most part, I wasn't really seeing any incentive to ever buy drops. So what that tells me is that Activision ends up saying, how are you going to make us money off your game through microtransactions? And then Treyarch's got to come up with an idea, and they say, okay, how about we do this? You're going to make a ton of money because X, Y, Z, and they got to sell that to Activision, and then Activision gives the green light. Okay, cool, we like this microtransaction system. So based off how the different studios handled microtransactions, it looked like Treyarch is horrible at negotiating their microtransaction system with Activision. So all Infinity Ward needs to know is that at the end of the day, we want to have direct access to DLC weapons. Obviously, if they add all these different cosmetics in the game, for the most part, they're cool, but not a lot of people are going to feel cheated if they don't get a particular cosmetic. But if they don't get access to a DLC weapon, you definitely feel cheated. And I know a ton of people felt cheated by Black Ops 4 and Black Ops 3 on how they handled their DLC weapons. And I know this to be true because on pretty much every DLC weapon video I've ever done, I always get comments saying, man, that weapon looks cool, too bad I'll never get it. So obviously the system sucks, we don't like it, we want to see a system that's a little bit more fair. Obviously Activision has to make money through microtransactions. Just make a ton of cool cosmetics, people will spend the money on that. you burn them on DLC weapons, they're going to be upset and they're not going to continue playing your game, and they're not going to spend anything on microtransactions, so you lose all the way around. So let's go ahead and talk about another elephant that's in the room, and that's exclusivity. Obviously, we had 7-day exclusivity. PlayStation got everything first for 1 week. That included maps, DLC weapons, pretty much all brand new content appeared on PlayStation 1 week before Xbox and PC. And we already know that Modern Warfare already renegotiated this particular deal with Sony to kind of figure out what would work for both sides, and that meant that there was a little bit of give and take. Unfortunately, even though we got crossplay and free DLC and everyone gets content at the same time, with the exception of the Spec Ops Survival Mode, we had to sacrifice the Spec Ops Survival Mode, which is completely unfair. Obviously, people are paying $60 for a game. If you bought it on PlayStation, you'd end up getting more content. If you bought it on Xbox or PC, you're gonna end up with less content. And even though I think the mode isn't all that great, I really never played it unless the internet was down. I think it's really unfair that if you've been with Xbox this entire time and you love the Spec Ops Survival, you're gonna either have to jump ship to PlayStation or wait the year when the game is a lot less relevant, which is a pretty bad situation no matter how you look at it. So obviously we know not really much is gonna change on that front, but one thing we can talk about is how they relay information. Every time you log into Black Ops 4, there's this little page that comes up and it basically gives you news for the day. We've seen this in World War II, we saw this in Infinite Warfare, and then we obviously kind of even saw this within the beta of Modern Warfare. The big issue, in my opinion, is there's so much information that they don't relay. And just a few examples of this are the patch notes. The patch notes should be there when you log into the game, so you know what was buffed, you know what was nerfed, you know if they're having any issues with not being able to level up Mark II variants or Mastercrafts, which people had for like a month, and they kept asking me in the comment section, do you have an update? Do you have an update? Well, that should be there in the game, is saying, hey, we're aware of this issue and we're currently working to address it, so the community would know that they're being heard. Because for the most part, it feels like nothing's getting done on a regular basis, and at least if they kept us informed a little bit, we'd feel like something is actually happening. So I really hope Modern Warfare handles the way they deliver information a little bit better, and they utilize that message of the day to actually deliver information. So next up, let's go ahead and talk about combat records. Probably about halfway through the year, they gave us this mobile app combat record, which if you're comparing it to the combat record from Black Ops 1, 2, or 3, it's complete garbage. So hopefully we're not shortchanged in Modern Warfare and we actually get a full and robust combat record. So regardless if Treyarch has already moved on to Black Ops 5 or whatever the 2020 COD title is gonna be, this still felt very much like recycled Ops 4. They brought back a ton of weapons that have already been in all the Black Ops titles, whether it was the M16, the Grav, which was previously called the Galil, the VMP, and a ton of other content that's just been recycled. Half the maps in the game, even the one that are part of the Black Ops Pass, are basically recycled. And even the maps that they did make from scratch, they were pretty bad. It's almost like every DLC map they designed, it was like, let's make a 10v10 map, but we're going to put 5v5 on there because you're going to play domination. Made no sense. There's plenty of maps in this game that they added that are just like, what the heck were you thinking? And that's completely unrelated to whether it's a 3-lane map or a non-3-lane map. And I've been playing Call of Duty since COD 4, Modern Warfare, so I've played tons and tons of maps. And I can pretty much guarantee that in 2 or 3 years when I think about Black Ops 4, there's not a single original map that I'm going to think of as memorable. And I think for Modern Warfare, this is going to be less of an issue because they brought their primary map designer from the Modern Warfare series to actually work on these maps. And those are some of the most memorable maps in Call of Duty history. Obviously, I can go ahead in detail and probably spend another 20 minutes talking about Blackout and Zombies and how they were executed than Black Ops 4, but this is primarily a multiplayer video because as we jump into Modern Warfare, we're not going to have a battle royale at launch. We're definitely not going to have zombies. I definitely covered a lot in this video, whether you agreed or disagreed. Hopefully you did enjoy it. If you made it to this point, please remember to hit that like button. If you're looking to find your way back for more Call of Duty content, make sure you do subscribe with notifications on. The support is definitely appreciated on a regular basis. I thank you all for watching, and as always, have a great day.